We've talked a lot about the wide array of live music you can find in town. We've heard from musicians and bands representing a variety of styles, as well as the venues and industry that supports them. But that hasn't painted a complete picture of the city. Live music is only a piece of the spectrum of live performance, and it's far from the only one getting attention. This is Kingston Live, and today's episode is a special one. We're talking drag. Today, there's no shortage of opportunities to experience drag performances in town. From drag shows at the Grad Club, to drag bingo at Daft Brewing, to drag comedy shows at the Broom Factory. The scene is alive in the city, but maybe more importantly, it's visible. But it wasn't always like this. Drag performance has a long history with deep ties to theater, music, dance, and the LGBTQA2+ community. And though it's broken into the mainstream in recent years due to viral sensations like RuPaul's Drag Race, its place in Kingston goes back to when the scene was still underground. Today we're joined by performers Tyffanie Morgan and Rowena Whey to talk about Kingston's drag scene, its story, and where it's going.
Don't touch the mic.
Don't touch it.
You can if you want.
I was going to say there's
ASMR.
Everything's fluid around here. Okay, here we go.
phallic-shaped objects.
No.
I think we're gonna have fun. Let's just get into
Let
it.
me do this. Okay.
This is Kingston Live. I'm Johnny San. Ange Stever is here.
Hello.
And we would like to welcome Tyffanie Morgan
Hello, sweetie.
and Rowena Whey.
Hello, hello, hello.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
There's already a great energy in the room. And
When they asked me to do this interview, they're like, "Do you want to interview drag queens?" I was like, "Yes,
Yes.
bitch!" I just finished watching all of RuPaul's Drag Race, so I'm very in the mode right now.
all of it. So you didn't
All
have
of
a
it,
life
all of
for
it.
months.
Exactly.
Months, decades.
Thinking about who I would be in Snatch Game. I know. Think about that. I might ask you later because that's a big thing.
I think your exact words when I asked you was "slay, bitch."
Yeah, I did say that.
Slay.
Slay, bitch. Yeah. Johnny, you sound so funny. Say it for me one more time.
You can play this back. No, actually,
Okay.
I think it's going to be an interesting discussion because I know actually very little about drag apart from just a casual observer. Ange obviously knows it very well.
I dove headfirst into the culture.
Let's just start with what is drag? How would you explain it to somebody who is unfamiliar?
I mean, you've been doing it longer than I have,
Oh,
so why don't
God.
you talk about what you think drag is, and I'll talk about the modern expression of drag.
Oh my God! Did you just throw some shade?
She does.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
This is often. I am abused by Rowena Whey. No, I've been doing drag. Well, it'll be 24 years come March.
Amazing.
It'll be 24 years come March, and drag has evolved over the decades that I've been doing it. And
Yeah, 'cause Tyffanie, you're like the OG
I'm the OG.
Yeah.
I'm the OG.
in this area.
Yeah. I'm the longest kind of running, performing drag artist in Kingston and the area, I guess so too. Probably, yeah.
Mostly. Let's not make any big claims,
let's
but
not
yeah,
make any
mostly.
big claims.
Mostly.
I am
don't know
the
what
first
was going on in Napanee. Things could have been happening.
Well, that's the thing. There are some performers from kind of around southeastern Ontario who've been performing, I think, longer, like maybe Dynasty.
Is she from Southeastern Ontario? Yes, she is.
Yeah,
Yes,
she is.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we
Okay.
won't
So
say
from
that, but from Kingston.
From Kingston. But yeah, the original podcast and drag queen of Canada. We'll just drop that there too. How to describe drag? Drag was it started off in Kingston as a way to as it was a fundraising sort of thing too. So during the AIDS crisis in the 80s and early 90s, I know my drag mother, the person who mentored me into drag, they started doing drag here at the gay clubs, raising money for Kingston AIDS Project, which became HARS, which is now I can't remember. Trellis as well. So they kind of so drag started off as kind of like an altruistic kind of way to raise funds in a fun and entertaining sort of way. But yeah, it is in itself an art form that is, I find, empowering. So like when I first saw my first drag show in person, because there was those movies, right, there, in the 90s, because I'm from there. But there's those movies in the 90s like Tuong Fu or Priscilla Queen of the Desert or something, which portrayed drag, but it wasn't really like true, like, Kingston sort of drag. So it was very empowering, and I fell in love with it, and that's why I started it. It really, at the beginning, it was really gay men dressing as in women attire sort of thing, and lip syncing to women's songs. That's kind of how it started, but it has evolved, and now this is where you jump in there, the new generation.
The new generation. No, that's very much where drag started. I mean, drag has been around for centuries. It was used in Shakespeare. It's used in ancient Chinese culture. A lot of like kabuki was also performed in drag. It's been around forever. It's not anything new. But the new expression of drag really is performative gender expression. So people performing as different genders or heightened genders or no genders, kind of to make a social statement about the fact that gender is a social construct and it doesn't actually have any significant impact on who we are in a society, but it's just something that we've created in order to better represent who we are. And so drag really is a heightened form of gender expression that's used in a performative, often comical aspect. But I like to say that drag is all art forms.
Oh, yes.
Because as a drag performer, you are not only doing gender expression. So in my case and Tyffanie's case, dressing up as women, I don't like to say that we're dressing up as women. We're dressing up as female genders.
Yeah.
But also doing makeup, fashion, lip syncing, dancing, singing, comedy, improv,
hosting,
all of these different things, hosting. It really is just everything.
Yeah. And oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I've noticed, because you talked about lip syncing, I've noticed a lot of drag performers at shows I've been going to recently singing themselves. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you're just seeing more? You guys are doing the shows more than me. I shouldn't have used the word guys. I hate that. That's something we can talk about later.
Dudes. You dudes.
Always defaulting to the masculine.
Bros, dude.
But is that something that you see more people singing as opposed to lip syncing, or still?
It's definitely something that I think is becoming more acceptable in drag.
Right.
A friend of mine calls it lip syncing live.
Okay.
Lip syncing live.
Why would that not be acceptable? Is it just sort of not part of the tradition, I guess?
It's just not the tradition.
Yeah.
And generally, like, the performers are men who are queens, or historically there were men who are queens. Your voice is deeper. And so if you're singing, you're not like, woo, like imitating a woman, because it was female impersonation is what drag queens were doing. Yeah. But like, so many people come into this art form from different backgrounds now. And so there are people who are singers who do drag, and there are people who are actors who do drag, or comedians who do drag, or just regular people who do drag.
It's singing live as a drag artist has been around for a long time as well. So
a lot of cabaret acts do that.
A lot of cabaret acts. Yes, I know a lot of artists from Toronto that do it. Since pandemic, though, like I think, and because the inspirations of RuPaul as well, doing, RuPaul started singing in the 90s. I had an album sort of thing. So out of the pandemic era where we pivoted to doing drag shows online sort of thing, to lip sync to someone's copyright music would shut you down on the live streams, right? And I saw a lot of people trying to start doing like some karaoke or something like that too. So that was really interesting to see that branching out, because drag was for the longest time in the little local gay bars, right? And it was lip syncing to whatever famous female pop artist it was at the time. But now it's starting to become a different
Whitney,
Britney, or Madonna. In my
Depending
case.
on what era you're from.
What era you're from. But yeah,
I'll vote with you, Tyffanie.
or suddenly Rowena, like you, we were doing a drag paint night, for goodness sakes. Like we everything. Just add drag to it,
Right.
and there you go.
Well, there's drag story time for kids. I think a lot of people think it's drag as an adult thing, an X-rated thing, but it's really for everybody.
It is. My favorite thing about story time is when I walk into a room and all of the kids just think that I'm a princess.
Yeah.
Oh.
And like many of them are too young to understand that it's drag. Most of them know that I'm like a man, not a woman, but they're just like, look at how pretty she is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, thank you. You can tell me I'm pretty all the time.
Oh, that is so cute. And I always enjoy it because this has happened once or twice, maybe twice for sure, definitely once, that some young toddler will be like, oh, how is RuPaul? I'm like, great. I'm assuming great in the mansion. I don't know RuPaul, sorry.
Well, with the story time, and I wanted to get into this too, because obviously as drag has become more popular and more mainstream, there's been pushback from certain groups. Have you encountered any prejudice in the area in that regard?
Not really in Kingston.
Okay.
In the story times that I've done in Kingston, I will get a little bit of online backlash sometimes, but people online are anonymous and they don't have to show their faces and do all these things. I got some backlash when I was doing one in Napanee in person last summer. And like, I'm the type of person who just takes it in stride. Like, I know that what I'm doing is right. I know that I'm not causing harm. All I'm doing is teaching people. Like, I'm literally sitting there reading a story about love and acceptance.
Yeah.
I don't know how that could be bad. The problem that they have is the fact that they think that I am either a gay person who's causing trauma, or they associate me with things that they fear. Like, and right now there's a huge fear against people who are transgendered, with a large portion of the community. And that's not a justifiable fear, but drag queens are very visible and are often associated with that. And so when you're knocking down transgendered individuals, you start with the drag queens and then you move from there. But I mean, how do you deal with that? You tell them that they're wrong. You try to educate them. And when they don't listen, you try to educate them again. And when they don't listen, you walk away.
Yeah, there comes a point where you have to just walk away. It's like smacking your head up against a brick wall.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, and it's only on you to educate as much as you want to, right? So, yeah.
And sometimes I feel like there's a bit of privilege almost for me because at my
Something you experience or just feel in general?
I am very privileged. Let's just put it that way. Yes.
Is there more to this, or are you just saying, like, I am just privileged?
No, I'm just privileged. I'm living my life. Because I find that I have done story time and I haven't had such the backlashes that some of the other drag artists have in this community, and I sometimes wonder if there is a privilege because my drag is kind of seen as I don't know how to describe it, matronly. You would
She's young and
vibrant and beautiful.
And
But you're like, yeah, I'm totally okay with the kid hanging out with Tyffanie versus some sort of.
You do have a more motherly vibe.
I feel like there's a bosom. The word bosom pops to
an auntie. It's like your favorite auntie.
Yeah.
Like,
But it's true.
But
There's a drag king here in Kingston, Dare de la Femme. When they do a lot of story times out in Gananoque and Brockville, and they have gotten so much hate. They've had active protests at their story times. They had to hire security.
Oh, someone tried to burn down the library in Brockville.
Someone tried to burn down the library. There were threats to burn it down. And there have been bomb threats at other places because of story time. But someone went on to Daredevil FM's Instagram. And I mean, we all have a public persona when we're doing story times, and we all have our actual drag personas, like when we're performing in adult shows. Like, they're different. Like, I don't show up in risque, like, spandex and leather when I'm doing a story time. I wear a long dress that's fully covered, and like, it's very different. And Dare does the same. But someone took one of his scantily clad photos from Instagram and was like, this is what you're showing your children.
The Photoshop. It was just ridiculous.
It was bad Photoshop, but people will search for a reason to hate.
Of course, always.
But I talk about the privilege, but still, like, whenever I'm doing a story time, I'm always checking my exits. You know, because you never know
when one of those kids is going to tackle you. It's just.
But and whenever you're having a drag story time, like, it's all with parental consent. You know, like, they're not. We're not just jumping on, you know, just like surprise, jump out from behind the bush sort of thing.
We're here to read the kids.
We're here to read the kids.
Exactly. Like, you don't have to bring your kids if you don't want to.
Totally, right?
But other parents can make the choice to do that if they want to.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I've never understood, is why people are against having them.
And there's more Tulsi.
Well, I have a friend of mine whose little guy has been obsessed with drag since he was like 4 or 5. And he was trying to find places to go, but he was not old enough to go into the show. So now here we fast forward probably 7 or 8 years. Those opportunities are available to him in this community. I love it. Amazing. Yeah.
I'm going to back up slightly and just show my ignorance and ask, what is a drag king? You mentioned that a moment ago.
So a drag queen is someone who dresses up as a female gender, whether that be a man, woman, non-binary, transgender individual dressing up as a woman. But a drag king is someone who's dressing up as a male gender.
Okay.
So what do you think about people who say like faux queen or something like that? Like when...
They're old terms that we're trying to kind of phase out.
Yeah.
It started out as like bio queen and AFAB queen and faux queen. And it's essentially just the drag community isolating out women who perform as queens.
Right.
And it really is isolating, and it's segregational, and it's biased. And it comes from a part of saying that their art isn't good enough because they're already women. But we have quite a few performers in Kingston who are female, who perform as queens. And they're just as talented, if not more talented, than many of the other performers. And they're doing drag.
But not us.
But not us, of course.
With the exception of the
exception
duo in front of you.
of us. It's just other people trying to diminish what they're doing. And like, I put on significantly less makeup than some of the women who perform as drag queens. And like, my hairstyling skills are probably worse than many of the women who perform as drag queens. Also my outfits. I mean, it's an all-encompassing art form. And it doesn't have a limit to what gender you have to be to do it.
And it's been that way forever and a day. Like, I remember when I first started doing drag, going to the clubs in Toronto and stuff, I'd be like, oh my goodness, that's an amazing drag performer. And then finding out that it's a woman as well. Like, well, she's a woman. But yeah, I was, you know, it was nice to see that. It was nice to see that kind of variation there, and that variation did not exist really back in that day. But today, like here in King, oh my gosh!
Well, some of my favorite drag queens are transgender women who do drag, and mostly just because I love when many of them have gotten breast implants, and I love when they just gobble up the money with their boobs.
I'm always willing to throw a few bucks in. Oh my gosh. Let's talk about some shows that you have coming on, because you mentioned one. So I want to say the Comedy of Errors, but there's something in...
Yeah, so it's a Comedy of Drag Errors.
Okay.
It's a new comedy variety show that we're going to be doing, but it's going to be all drag. but it's essentially going to encompass all forms of comedy and all forms of drag. So performers are open to doing lip syncs, but with some sort of comedy aspect. Also live singing. I myself do a lot of live singing parodies. So I'll write parodies to songs and then I'll sing them. We have an artist coming in who is an improv actress.
Sketch comedy actress
from Second City in Toronto.
Nice.
So she's coming down, Hilary Yoss, to perform, and there'll probably be a lot of audience interaction and mic work. And it is an all-ages show at the Broom Factory. February 17th. Yes, it's a Saturday.
Factory. Get your tickets today.
Family Day weekend. I know you're not working.
Actually, I'm going to give a shout out here because speaking of the Broom Factory, a few months ago, we have a weekly meeting with Kingston Live. We talk about what's going on and who we might want to speak with. And Rob brought up, maybe we do a drag feature at some point. And I was like, oh, maybe. And we sort of left it at that. And I think it was like 2 weeks later, I was at the Makers meetup and I met the two of you. And then it was like the next day I said to Rob, I think we should do the drag feature. I think this needs to happen. But yeah, I just want to give a shout out to, because this is organized by the Kingston Canadian Film Festival, the Makers Meetup. It happens every month. I think the first one was November when we met? Was that it?
First one was in November.
I skipped December. And then I went to the January one. That was fun.
That was my first one, and that's where we met. So
we survived the weather, the snow / torrential rain.
That was a rough day.
It was a rough one for sure.
But yeah, if you are in any creative, artistic domain, yes, check out the Makers Meetup. That's through Kingston Canadian Film Festival.
I believe it's the first Tuesday of each month.
That makes sense.
Yes.
That sounds right.
I have no idea what time it's at, but it's
4:00.
4:00.
Yeah.
First Tuesday of each month at the Broom Factory.
I want to talk about music. How do you select the music that you perform to?
Well, I mean, Tyffani's been performing to Cher for the last 20 years, so it's really easy for her.
Hey, consistency's key, right?
Is key. You know what? I don't enjoy any performance more than seeing Tyffanie perform Cher. Actually, performing ABBA.
Cher doing ABBA.
Cher performing ABBA.
Okay.
Oh,
Ever since Mamma Mia 2 came out, she has been performing Cher, performing ABBA, every single show. And honestly, I've seen the same performance probably 100 times at this point, and I still love it.
Amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I think it's mostly ABBA. How do you choose the music? That's a really good question. Like when I first started off, I was I think it's whatever music that you're really into at the time. So when I first started doing drag, I was really into the club scene. So there was a lot of club music that I was doing, or remixes of songs and stuff. Like my first Conte Patrio by Donna Summer remix by, I can't remember his name now. But yeah, that was like my first performance at Club 477, and I got the little standing ovation, which then hooked me into drag for the rest of my life. But yeah, and then it slowly kind of evolves to what your tastes are like.
Standing up to leave does not count as a standing ovation.
Stop, Rowena, stop. That is rude. But I think what's really, like, if I give any advice to any drag artist out there, is to do music that you're impassioned about, like, you know, you feel passionate about, that you actually enjoy and like doing. Because if you're going to be doing music that you don't like to do, it's going to get very tired very quickly.
Yeah.
I echo a lot of that. It's music that impassions you. Whenever I'm choosing a performance song, especially a new performance song, it's usually something that either I feel like I can really embody the energy of the song and like the attitude of the song. I'm a very emotive performer, and for me, I have to feel the emotion of the song, otherwise it doesn't work for me. Or I have some way that it tickles my funny bone, because I really like doing a comedic performance or doing some sort of mix of that song with spoken word or with other music that makes it a little bit funnier for me. So if I find a song and I like hear it on the radio, I'm like, oh, that really works. That works really well. But then sometimes you just have like themed performances. So like a few years back, I did a VH1 Diva live performance where I did all of the songs from the VH1 Divas live show in one show. And that was my performance. So I had to learn all those songs. Yeah, it's kind of whatever makes you feel, it's an art form, whatever makes you feel artistic.
You ever get on stage and with something new and you're like, never doing that again?
All the time. All the time.
It's like karaoke. Sometimes you pick a song, you're like, oh, the crowd is not into this.
Yep.
Okay.
But what is it? Is it the music or is it the performer? Like, why doesn't it land?
Sometimes it just doesn't translate.
That's always a good question. That's always a good
It's
question.
like, as somebody who's done stand-up comedy for over a decade, that's tough because I can do the same show back to back. One crowd loves it, the next crowd doesn't. So
that's me whenever I do Broadway.
Yeah.
Like I do a Broadway number and there'll be like two people in the back row going, yes, queen. And then everyone else is like, why is she doing an 11-minute Mean Girls original Broadway mix?
Stop with the Mean Girls. Oh my God.
Which I have now done twice. And the first time I did it, everyone was like blank face. The second time I did it, everyone's like, this is so funny. And like, it really,
right?
it's different. I will say though, as a drag performer, you have to know. The one thing you're required to know as a drag queen is all of the lyrics and all of the mannerisms to Whitney Houston's It's Not Right, But It's Okay, the Thunderpuss remix.
Okay. Why the look,
My face
Tiffanie?
has just dropped. What?
Sorry, if you're a drag queen who dances.
You need to know that?
Yes,
Okay.
everyone must know it. It is a requirement.
She's like back to shit.
She doesn't dance.
Oh my God. I feel so old because I remember when that dropped at Fly Nightclub in Toronto for the first time. Oh my God. Thunderpuss. I miss Thunderpuss.
Let's talk about drag mothers for a minute.
Oh.
Yeah. And maybe this is just an assumption. Rowena, was it easier for you to find a drag mother than it was for you, Tiffanie?
I don't have a drag mom.
You don't have... What? Okay, so
No.
now this is
Right,
interesting
wait, I'm
to
going
me.
to back up again.
What is a drag mom?
Yes,
All right.
yes.
Yeah, let's-
Definition.
I think I got a sense of what it is, but please
Definition.
explain just for the record.
Yeah.
Definition. Well, I'll give my definition.
Well, I mean, there's a large process. You have to find an operating room first, and you have to surgically cut the child. No. I'll let you talk.
That was all false. So a drag mother is a term that we use for a mentor who usually puts you into the drag first time sort of thing. And there's slight cultural differences even across Canada sort of thing. So in Kingston, for instance, drag mother Jazz Morgan is my drag mother, and she got me into drag for the first time, painted my face, got me into my first show sort of thing, and then I take her last name. And in some other circles, there's a few other where you're drag mother, and then you can also take other last names of other people who put you into a drag show for the first time and stuff. But really, it's kind of a mothering kind of mentor kind of role sort of thing. It's not something to be taken lightly.
No, it's essentially taking ownership of helping someone develop their drag career, their drag persona, their identity as a performer, and showing them the ins and outs of the community, showing them the ins and outs of all of the different aspects of drag. Because a lot goes into just becoming a drag queen beyond the makeup. I mean, there's body shaping, there's picking clothes, there's styling wigs, there's figuring out like what kind of performances you want to do. Sometimes your drag mothers will like teach you dance moves, and I didn't have any of that.
Yeah. So do you just that's interesting to me because I feel like there's usually somebody that introduces you. But
That was true back in the day. Like back in the day when I first started doing drag, that was before YouTube. Before YouTube, and the only way you could learn how to do drag was learning from someone else.
That's
right?
so
Like to do
interesting
the
what-
makeup, to do
yeah.
all that. You had to learn it from someone else, and then YouTube came out.
right.
Thank you for listening to Kingston Live. Be sure to subscribe on your platform of choice and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. For more great Kingston music, check out the Kingston Live playlist on Spotify. For show listings, artist info, and all things Kingston music, check out kingstonlive.ca.
when you mentioned the name thing, that was interesting because I've never heard of that, taking on the name. That's very interesting. Let's talk about how you came up with your names. We know how you got your last name. Let's talk about the full name.
That was my first time doing drag. So Jazz, she, so we all got together, a whole group of new prospective artists at this apartment. So it was like within a block of Club 477. And we're all getting our makeup done. So she sat me down, probably on the floor right here too, the sort of situation. Sat me down. She's like, "You're not looking in the mirror until you're done." I'm like, "Okay." She's like, "Have you figured out a name?" I'm like, "I'll figure out a name when I see myself in the mirror." And so, I don't know, half an hour, something like that later, she's painting me and she's like, puts the wig on me, borrowed wig from one of my drag sisters. Oh God, it looked terrible. Anyway, we have to think this was early 2000s. But she's, I turned around, looked into the full-length mirror, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm Tyffanie from the 1980s. With that big reddish hair and all that. And I'm like, I guess I'm Tyffanie Morgan. That's...
All right, beautiful.
I
what
think
about you, Rowena?
Yeah, so I'm a proud drag immaculate conception, is what I call myself. Really, I'm just a child of the internet, so I didn't have a drag mom. So I watched a whole bunch of tutorials, and I learned how to do drag that way.
Okay.
I had people who inspired me to do drag, like people I saw in the community, and an ex-boyfriend I had that did drag, although I didn't learn that until later. But I saw them performing, and I was like, oh, that's really fun. Like, maybe I can do that. So I came up with my drag name actually like in a brainstorming session in a subway tunnel in Edmonton with a friend of mine. We're just sitting there. I was like, I want my last name to be Whey, W-H-E-Y, because at the time I was a personal trainer. I'm really into fitness. And I was like, whey protein is the one protein I'm not allowed to eat because I'm lactose intolerant. Oh. So I was like, Whey.
I'll have this one way or another.
Exactly. Any which way I can.
Yeah.
It's great marketing. Great marketing.
It's great marketing. And then I was trying to figure out a pun that went with Whey. And I really loved the name Rowena because of one of my favorite movies, Mr. Holland's Opus, a great musical movie about a music teacher. And Rowena was the Broadway starlet who tried to steal the man from his wife. And I really felt that. So I became Rowena Whey, which is a really stupid pun that no one ever gets. But it's just like, rowing away.
Okay.
Would either of you, or have you, drag mothered anyone else? How does somebody get into this?
I mean, you've been a drag mom a couple times.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know where half of them are, but
they've all stopped doing drag, or they moved on, or
realized they couldn't live up to
they couldn't
their
live
mama.
up to the expectations of mama. Yeah, that's probably more true.
Yeah. A lot of people start doing drag and then stop doing drag because it's a lot. It's a lot of money to do it. It's a lot of time commitment. It's often hard to get shows because the scene is so small and people who book shows generally book their friends. So unless you're like really in the scene, it's hard to break into it.
Right.
Which is why we have like open stage now. But
well, and also a lot of people get into it just to explore themselves too. You know, quite often you'll have like a 20-year-old sort of who'll get into it, but then by the time they're 25, they're like, well, I think I'm good with that. I'm good with that, and then box it away and then
real
take it out every now and again.
Real life takes over,
and that's okay too. That's totally okay too. Actually, we joke around that it's more. I'm a little bit of an oddity.
You are an oddity.
Doing it for so long, because quite often people will just kind of box it away. They're
hang up their wigs.
Hang up their wigs, and it is competitive. Yes, it is competitive. Like to get those shows.
But I think anything in the arts is competitive.
Yeah,
I mean, performance spaces, performance slots are limited. Just in general.
Well, especially for drag artists, it's only been recently that we have all these different venues asking us to come in and do drag shows or do drag events. Because when I first started, it was you would only get the gay bar when we had a gay bar. Asking us, the grad club was always a very welcoming sort of thing. And there was a lot of venues who would not return the phone calls. We won't say who those are. But today, like now, you know, they're calling us. They're like, hey, we heard about these drag things.
We heard all those things were being sold out.
We heard there was some money to be earned here.
Something to sell,
So I have had people that I've put in drag and have performed, but I don't have any drag children at the moment. I have nurtured a lot of drag careers and helped start a lot of drag careers, but I'm not a drag mom at the moment. I have one child who's currently gestating, wanting to be born, but we've not made her debut yet.
Right.
And you have a brand new daughter.
I have a brand new daughter, Fifi Ann Morgan.
You forgot about your daughter.
Shout out to Fifi Ann. I did not forget about my drag daughter. She won't let me forget. But Fifi Ann Morgan, yes. Shout out to Fifi Ann Morgan. But I also feel like I'm a drag mother to all the drag artists in town here, because there's always something after doing this scene for so long. There's always something I can impart on people. But like I've always said too that drag, at least in Kingston, was a jack of all trades, master of nothing, right? Like you have to know how to do makeup, you have to know how to book a place, you have to know how to set up audio, you have to know how to mix some music, you have to know how to like you have to do a lot of stuff. But
I'm sorry, did you just say you have to know how to choreograph?
Hey, I've done choreography. Even if it's just some jazz hands. It's jazz hands up, jazz hands down. That's choreo.
Well, this is interesting because throughout this conversation, I've been comparing drag queens, as you've been speaking, to more traditional musicians and the process they go through to, from learning the craft to becoming a performer. And it seems, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems very different to me because musicians, a lot of them, I think a lot of people would be surprised to know how many performers are actually very introverted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But drag queens, correct me if I'm wrong, seem to be very extroverted. Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
So a lot of people who do drag, I mean, I think Tyffanie and myself are exceptions. We're both fairly social. You're probably more introverted than I am.
Probably am, yeah.
The majority of drag performers are actually very introverted people.
Okay.
And they use drag as a way to be more extroverted and be more out in public. But often if you go up to a drag performer outside of their actual performance, they're very shy. They're not the most talkative. Drag is their way of becoming larger than life.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm just trying to relate it to like a live musician or something, like a guitarist or something. Like for a drag artist, you kind of first have to focus on getting on the stage first, sort of thing.
And then you learn your craft.
And then you learn your craft versus a guitarist, you'd be like learning the guitar first for a very long time before you actually get up on that stage. But
why don't we make people be good before we let them be on stage? No, I'm kidding.
Well, there's a vulnerability when you're just being 100% yourself, as like I grew up acting and I felt like on stage I always act. And the moment I had to just like do something as me, I got really nervous and I was like, what is this? Why am I feeling this? And I was like, oh, it's because I'm being vulnerable. I'm just doing this as Angela, not as Arlene in this play or whatever it may be. So I think, when you talk about a drag performer coming out of their shell or being more extroverted, when they're all dressed up, I totally can see that. Yeah.
And like a lot of drag performers come from performing backgrounds.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how they start doing like acting or musicals or music or singing or whatever they do. And then they find drag as a way of doing that more regularly, but with additional art forms.
Yeah, so that's interesting because musicians, you're like, in a basement with an instrument for years, and then suddenly you're on a stage. Oh, I have to be a performer now.
Yes, yes.
This is a completely different
We learned
thing.
performer first.
Yeah. Maybe
And then
that's the
you want to
difference.
sing too? Okay, let's
We
look.
have the gremlin in the basement situation too. When you're learning your makeup, I mean, you practice. You sit in your bedroom and you stare at your mirror and you're like, how do I become better looking with makeup? And some people just never get there, and that's their drag persona.
And Rowena, I was going to point to you, Rowena. I'm like, oh, really? Oh, you're going to point to me, are you? Okay. I'm all about the budget makeup. Hello. But I'm going back to that question, though, too, because I do feel that I'm an introvert, because with introverts, you can be an extrovert for a few hours, right? But then afterwards, I'm at home. I'm on that couch. I'm decompressing for the next 2 days, 8 hours, 2 days.
I do think that I'm one of the rare drag performers who is an extrovert. The being on stage, talking to people, seeing people, doing things, I could do it for hours and hours and hours because it's what gives me energy.
It's your personality.
It's my personality.
Yeah.
And that's like my drag persona is me, just a little bit bigger.
Exaggerated.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it doesn't give me a high. Like, hello. Like, you can leave a show just feeling so pumped. So pumped. But then I do need that downtime
do
afterwards.
you go right to bed and you're like, how do I sleep?
Well, exactly.
I can't sleep right away.
I have
energy
2 or 3
then,
hours where I'm sitting on the couch eating food because I did not eat before the show.
So
because
hard.
corsets and dancing.
Late night eats.
Yeah.
Late night eats.
Late night eats. I sit on the couch and I watch 2 hours of TV and I stare at my phone. Watch all of the videos of me performing over and over and over again.
Hold on.
I want to go back to venues. We mentioned venues a moment ago. What makes for a good drag venue?
Liquor.
Liquor. Yeah, liquor. It really depends on the show. So different styles of shows kind of require different venues. A stage is not really a necessity for drag. A lot of drag is bringing the show to the audience. Like when you're performing music, you're on stage and the experience is seeing the musicians play and hearing the music they're producing. When you're watching a play, you're watching the play. But drag is about interacting in most senses. So a lot of performers don't stay on stage, even if we give them one, because they're interacting with the audience. And they're making jokes and they're letting you into the show. And oftentimes performers will bring people on stage as part of the show. So you don't need a venue with anything except for sightlines, because you have to be able to have the audience see you as you're walking around.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing.
Okay.
Yeah. It's we set up quite often different styles of. I do love myself a theater style kind of seating,
Lighting
where
and all that
everyone's it's
stuff.
all up on the stage with the lighting, with everything. I prefer that, but you can do a show in a cafe where a drag artist is walking around amongst the tables, like a brunch or something like that. But yeah, you can do it at any kind of venue as long as there's some sight lines and the audio. Like, oh my gosh,
The audio is the most essential thing, because especially if you're lip syncing, you don't want people to hear you like smacking your lips and saying words while you're lip syncing. So the music is generally very loud.
It is, yes, it tends to be quite loud. And plus for that drag artist, because if they are going out into the audience sort of thing, they have to be able to hear the music as well that they're lip syncing to.
Now, when y'all come out into the audience, that's when I lose all of my money. So let's talk about tipping for a second.
Give me all your money.
For somebody, because I feel like a lot of people in Kingston, maybe they'll hear this and think, I should check out a drag show. What's the etiquette when tipping?
Well, tipping is fairly new to Kingston.
Okay.
Fairly new to
I don't know
Kingston.
about this yet.
In the US, where like drag was a lot bigger, or in the big cities,
Toronto, there was lots of tipping in Toronto.
I mean, in the States, you can tip $1. So people will generally throw money at people, which is fairly easy. In Canada, the minimum is $5 generally, because we don't make it hail on performers.
we don't throw the coins.
So if you want to tip a queen, hold money up. and they will come to you, or you can go to them and give it to them. Etiquette, if you like what you see, give it money. Generally, that's because as performers, we don't make very much. Like, booking fees for drag queens are generally not equitable with live musicians or with actors and all these things. And so, especially if it's a large cast of performers, the booking fee is not very much. I know Tyffanie and I have been trying to work to repair this a lot by actually like asking for booking fees from venues, which is something new the past few years, which is really nice. But generally that's where tipping came from, is drag queens didn't get paid very much. And so the audience would pay. But now what it is you tip in order to get an extra show that's kind of just yours. So if you hold up money, performers will generally come to you and then interact with you in some way, whether that be like making you a part of their song or giving you a lap dance, depending on who your performer is. Not if it's Tyffanie.
Depending if it's a $50 bill. Okay.
Exactly. But
What
like
color?
generally etiquette, the one thing I will say is if you're going to give a queen money, don't take it away and make them like play with it. Like just give it to them.
Yes.
Just give it to them.
Yeah, that would make me walk away.
Yeah,
I'd be
right?
like, no, I don't need you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tipping, when I first started off, there wasn't really tipping in Kingston. I remember my first tip, I was doing a show in Halifax. And I'm like, oh, what do I do? What do I do with
Take
this?
it and run.
What
Take
do
it
I
and
do
run.
with this?
Bosom, mama.
But I think it's a moment for that drag artist to, show some appreciation for the person giving you the money, like whether or not it's some eye contact, holding, whatever it is, sort of thing. So
This is why there was that STI
appreciative.
outbreak a long time ago in Kingston.
But and it is funny too, because I remember when they first started tipping and suddenly going to the bank with a whole bunch of $5. $5 bills, and they're like, and I'm like, I'm a drag queen.
They wanted an explanation.
I'm a drag queen.
I remember-
Thank God money is plastic now. Let me tell you, thank goodness money is plastic.
I remember buying a TV with my tips from drag. It was $900 in $5 bills.
Was it in a briefcase?
It was not. It was in my wallet. It was like folded up, like my wallet was bursting, but it was a great feeling. It was a great feeling.
And what was the reaction to that?
Oh, they're like, I guess this is audio. Eyes bulging out of their heads, like.
Did you take it out and you lick your fingers? You just 5, 10.
Well, that's 50. The thing is, I had to count it out for them.
No.
And then they had to count it out again. And so it was the longest transaction ever. But every time I pay with $5 bills, I am sure that people think I'm a stripper.
Yeah, that's funny.
That's what I was inferring to. But anyway, yes.
It's like making a big purchase with Canadian Tire money or something.
Exactly. 20 cents, 40 cents, 60 cents.
I only deal in cash.
Tell us about maple tea.
What's the maple tea? What is the maple tea, Rowena?
It's the live broadcast podcast where we talk about everything Kingston drag, Canadian drag, and everything that we want to, mostly just because we are unable to stay on a script.
Yeah, we're not.
Yeah, and we just kind of get off topic. But it is our podcast. Yeah. That we just did our 100th episode right before Christmas.
I know.
Nice.
Can you imagine 100 episodes? That's insane.
Yeah. It started out as a Canada's Drag Race review podcast during the pandemic because we weren't able to leave our houses and the first season of Canada's Drag Race was airing. So we were like, well, why don't we talk about it? It's a good time for us to catch up. Really, it's just our therapy. We just talk to each other live. And that's what makes it a little different is that we record it live so people can watch us as we record it and can send us messages and talk to us. But then we also post it, that live, unedited podcast. So
Well, it's edited.
okay, it's edited. It has
I take the little
The front and back
dry
off.
bits off the front and back. That's all I do.
And she adds,
and make sure the levels are all the same.
make sure the levels are okay. But she never edits out what I say, which I'm sure if someone goes back and listens to all these episodes,
I'm sure you'll be canceled in 10 years' time.
I'm sure.
I don't think it'll take 10.
If I haven't been canceled yet, no. But we've also we interview like drag performers.
That's been fun. That's been fun. Talk about some of the drag performers at Rowena.
So mostly performers from Canada's Drag Race, but we've interviewed winners of Canada's Drag Race, Isis Couture, Jimbo, who won All Stars this year. And a few, like one of my favorite interviews was Bombay.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely just chaotic in the best sense of the word, talking about lard. Like just so fun.
Egads. Yeah, Boa. Yeah. We started it. Yeah, it was a pandemic.
It was a pandemic thing.
Yeah. I was like, well, I know how to podcast as the first podcasting drag queen of Canada. Check out
Breakfast with Tyffanie.
Breakfast with Tyffanie. I went to all the podcasts. But yeah, I was like, I have the equipment and everything. I'm like, let's do this. Let's just podcast. Let's just do it. And that was kind of the moment. It was just, okay, let's just do it. Put it together. Mark Blevis, thank you so much for doing our intro and extra as well out there in the world.
Which someone tried to claim as their own a couple weeks ago.
Don't get me started. Like Russia.
Oh, here's the maple tea.
Russia and Belarus are basically trying to block all gay content these days. So they always put some sort of copyright on. They're like, there's copyright. And you're like, what copyright? There's no music.
There's no music. It's us talking, and the intro music was made for us.
And I'm like, okay, whatever. However you want to block gay content coming into Belarus or Russia, sure, fine.
So RuPaul's Drag Race. I've thought about this myself. John, just to put this into some sort of context for you.
Thank you.
Any listener who's not a RuPaul fan, they play a game called Snatch Game. Oh. And during Snatch Game, they impersonate someone famous. And so you must have put some thought into, if you were on Snatch Game, who you would be impersonating.
I mean, we have both may or may not have applied for Drag Race at some point in time.
Okay.
And one of the questions on the application is, who would you do for Snatch Game? Because part of the application process is you have to record yourself as that person doing Snatch Game.
Allegedly, if we ever looked at the application.
Right.
So Snatch Game is like Match Game, like the old TV show where celebrities would try and match with contestants. I kind of have gone up and down over the years. I'm not great with like voices. I can do like acting impressions, but I'm not great with doing voices, which is weird because I'm a singer. So you would think that I'd be able to match those things, but all of my impressions come out as old lady, Southern, Jamaican, or even my British turns out Southern and Jamaican. It's really bad. So I want to do, if I were to do it, Kathleen Turner.
Oh, well, right now with that voice, hello.
With this voice,
yes,
hello.
Kathleen Turner.
Yeah. Mostly just because her voice is a little deeper. She's very sultry. Her style is yeah. Her style is very similar to my style as a performer, just kind of in attitude for most of her movies. She was like the sultry vixen, except for, I guess, Mommy Dearest, which is the other side of my attitude. The hateful bitch. That's who I would be, Kathleen Turner.
What about you, Tyffanie?
Well, I have this theory that the best way, the best kind of character that you can do is someone who people don't really know. A historical character, and then you're able to make it your own. So in my world, if I was to do it, allegedly, I would want to try to do Laura Secord.
Okay.
A historical figure, which you can have so much fun with, because the whole idea of Snatch Game,
a Canadian historical figure.
Yes, Canadian historical figure, but is to add the comedy to it. So, you be like Laura Secord, be like, okay, Fitzgibbon, blah, 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 or something. Would you like some chocolates? Like,
Yeah.
You could have so much fun with that.
Yes.
You have so much fun with that. So that's my thought, because when we look at some of the amazing Snatch Games, like Giselle.
Oh, yeah. She was Marie Curie.
Marie Curie.
And she just became like an alien in the thing because she got like radium and radiation poisoning and sickness. And like some good ones are like people who we don't know anything about.
Like a historical...
Well, yeah. It's kind of like you know about them, but then you get to make it your own because we're not so attached to them that we're like, oh, they're not hitting the voice or they're not hitting the whatever.
Because if you were like, I'm doing Britney Spears, people would expect 100% kind of Britney Spears.
Like you either have to be really good or you have to do something that's you in a like just as a different character, or do something that's no one knows anything about.
Yeah. Okay. Oh God, Laura's Secord. I'm never going to be able to get that out of my head. That's so weird. It's such a weird one, but I love it.
All the chocolate.
All the chocolate.
All the chocolate.
Well, if you want to go see a drag show in Kingston, go visit dragshow.ca. Dragshow.ca, your source for drag shows in Kingston.
And your source for Tyffanie Morgan.
Is there a source? Well, yeah. That's a funny thing too. I'm just going to share this story then. So, Rowena is going to roll her eyes at this story. But, so the moral of the story is whenever someone online, just randomly online says submit a video, you should submit a video. So... When RuPaul's Drag Race, maybe the second or third season or something like that, they were looking for drag artists, and at that time, we're talking early 2000s, not a lot of drag artists were online. Like I think MySpace was around at that point, but not a whole lot of drag artists were on MySpace. I had my own website. Tiffanie.com, Tyffanie.com, and I got this random email. Then they were producers from a show called RuPaul's Drag Race. And they're like, oh, we would love for you to submit an application video, because back then it was just an application video. And I was like, oh, okay. And I'm like, oh, I think I've heard about this RuPaul's Drag Race. And I talked to a few other online drag artists from Toronto, which were like 2. And they're like, oh, yeah, we got that too, blah, blah, blah. And then the consensus was sort of like, well, you know, drag on television, how long is that going to last for? We're like, what's... I'm like, oh, no, I'm not going to submit a video. I'm not going to submit an application video. Because I'm like, it'll end. It'll be canceled next week.
Fast forward
20 years.
Global empire. With over 50 seasons.
Many franchises. And I'm like... I should have done that.
Submit
video.
the application. Okay.
Just send the video to the mystery person online. Just do it.
Solid advice for anyone in any situation.
In any situation, some random person's like, I'm a producer of blah, blah, blah. Submit a video. Sure.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
That's not actual advice. But
no. We're going to roll back on that.
Well, quite often we'll wrap up the podcast by, usually we have bands, we have musicians in here, and I'll ask them if they have any advice for aspiring musicians. And I think you've kind of answered this question, but is there any advice, someone listening, an aspiring drag performer out there, what would you say to them?
Don't do it. No, so that's the joke answer. That's what every drag performer says. So drag is a lot. It will consume all of your money and all of your time. So if you're starting out drag, get an outfit from a discount shop that you feel amazing in. Grab some dollar store makeup if you don't have any, and paint your face a few times and wear that outfit and go to a drag show in drag and see if you like the feel of it. Because if you don't enjoy that experience, you probably won't enjoy doing drag. And then once you've done that, talk to some drag performers and they will get you into a show. They'll get you into the scene. They'll give you advice and you'll slowly get to be a part of the community. And when you're ready to perform, come to the open stage the first Wednesday of every month at the Grad Club, because it's open. Anyone can perform, like an open mic, but for drag.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Advice for someone getting into drag for the first time: don't do it. And but if you decide no, when it comes to drag or any kind of like thing artistically that people are interested in, the first and foremost thing that I say is just jump in and start doing it. You know, if you want to do a podcast, if you want to become a musician or something, just don't just jump into it. Don't really think about it that much. Just just start doing it, and you'll start learning those skills while you're doing. And I think that's always kind of been my way of doing things. Like, with podcasting, I was like, just jumped right in and start doing it. Don't feel that you need to hold back, because there's quite a few drag artists who haven't made it yet to the scene. I'm looking at you, Rowena, at one of your children, that I'm like, they just need to get on the stage. Just jump in, 2 feet, jump in, and you learn it as you go, sort of thing.
Don't be afraid to be busted, because everyone is busted at the beginning, and then you'll grow. Mm-hmm. And it's okay, because Tyffanie is still busted.
And make sure you get photos of that, because you may be on Drag Race one day, and then they'll use it. They'll use the busted photo.
I have sorry, go ahead.
I'm trying to whenever I think about that, I'm like, where's my first photo of drag? And I'm like, I don't think I have it. I think it's in some photo album somewhere.
I just had like a vision of you, Rowena, giving away tips, but in like a rowboat in the summertime, just like rowing away with Rowena Whey, and you're just giving your drag tips. I didn't have a mama.
I didn't have a mama. I pulled myself up with my own.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. You know what? I have my canoeing licenses. Yes! I've got my levels. I'm gonna get a rowboat, and there I'm gonna do rowing away with Rowena Whey. Tyffanie will be in the front of the boat, just videotaping me, praying that I don't tip over the rowboat.
Get some waterproof equipment.
Oh my God.
Tyffanie Morgan and Rowena Whey. What a pleasure to meet you both today.
It was so nice to be here. Thank you so much for having us.
This has been Kingston Live. We encourage you to rate us on your listening platform of choice and subscribe where possible. For show listings, artist info, and all things Kingston music, check out kingstonlive.ca. Kingston Live was produced in Kingston by Soundwise, hosted by John Sanfilippo and Ange Stever. Voiceovers by Riley Jabor and John Sanfilippo. Writing and research by Peter Sanfilippo. Executive producer, Rob Howard. Kingston Live is a member of the Canadian Live Music Association. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at podcast@kingstonlive.ca.